This brings us to the fifth element of the scale attributes, which is engagement. And what we mean by engagement is really three things. One is digital feedback loop, because we now can gather and understand how our users are using a particular service or a product. The second is engagement incentive prizes, the use of prizes to incite a particular behavior. And the third is gamification. Okay, so let me touch on each of those really briefly. Engagement, over the last few years, as we have digital feedback loops for the first time, we can actually track how our user is interacting with our product or service. A/B testing on websites is a classic example of engagement, where we can see what somebody's doing, we can tune a product or service. Today, if you look at new internet web services like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Foursquare, all of them when they launched, they were really pretty terrible from a design perspective, navigation perspective, information architecture perspective. Reid Hoffman made this famous quote that if you're not embarrassed by your product when you launched, you've waited too long. Right? And if you see these new breed of internet startups, they get something out the door that's half-baked, and then by using a feedback loop with the user to very quickly see how they're using the product or service, and then they can quickly optimize and iterate that product very quickly. So today, the way you succeed on the internet is you launch a half-baked idea, but you're just trying to test a core premise, and then you iterate very quickly, and you can quickly find out from the users which features they'd want the most and literally respond. And so you take all the guesswork out of product development by using digital feedback loops. So that's a key first component of it. And that works for your existing user base once you can get it. When you want to engage community, really the best idea there is gamification. Okay? And there's kind of several aspects of gamification. There's some key attributes that we've listed here on the table. The one is ranking transparency and leaderboards and so on. You want to know that, hey, I'm the top of the list, or I'm in the 10th percentile, or this is how good I am compared to others. The second is self-efficacy, and give people a sense of control, agency, and impact. So if I'm using your product or service, the engagement model allows me to self-monitor and self-moderate in my sense. The third is peer pressure and saying, hey, your friends are using the service, you should also use it. The fourth is eliciting positive rather than negative feedback loops. Encourage people to submit feedback reviews, reward them with a little bit of a badge or something, give them rankings and tiers. The fifth is feedback, very fast feedback on something. Hey, you didn't quite make your elite qualification. If you fly 10,000 more miles, you'll get to that super platinum user, et cetera, et cetera. The sixth is very clear, authentic rules, goals, and guidelines of how you navigate with that product or service. And the final one is virtual currencies or virtual points, so that you have a reward mechanism. If you add all those mechanisms up, that essentially gives you a really good framing for digital engagement to provide a basis for gamification and incentive prizes to go forward. And the reason that engagement models are important are as follows. The first, you increase loyalty of your customer base, your community, to your brand or to your MPE. Secondly, it amplifies ideation. I mentioned that incentive prizes come up with all sorts of fascinating cross ideas that you would never think of. That when Peter ran his SpaceX prize, the winning team, the fuel they used was actually a mixture of laughing gas and tire rubber, right? You would never kind of think of that on your own. Some weird set of people thought of that particular idea, and it creates a lot of variety in the different ideas that come along. And we've learned in history that great ideas always come when you cross disparate previous ideas together. The third is, as I mentioned, it converts crowd to community. Incentive prizes specifically are very good at that. The fourth, it really leverages your marketing efforts. If you have a marketing effort, then if you have engagement with crowd and community involved, it really amplifies your own capabilities. And finally, as I mentioned, it provides a digital feedback loop for your users, so that as you interact with your product and service, you can constantly keep tuning it to what's happening out in the world, which is increasingly becoming more volatile.